Coming up on The Cut.
The Hezbollah conflict escalates, what this means coming up.
An increase in college violence among the United States.
And this animal that has taken storm over the internet.
All of this and more coming up as The Cut starts now.
Hello, and welcome to The Cut Network. I'm Andy Ruiz.
And I'm Tyler Abrams. Tensions between Israel and the militant group Hezbollah have reached new heights following deadly missile strikes within Lebanon. The missile strikes last week were part of a deadly second wave of attacks by Israel that were meant to target members of the armed Hezbollah militant group. This news comes just after hundreds of pagers and walkie-talkie devices were remotely detonated across the country. Although the Israeli government declined to comment, Hezbollah solely blames Israel for the attack. According to CNN, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah condemned the attacks, calling them, quote, massacres, and vowed that a, quote, reckoning would come. His comments contribute to a growing concern that Israel's conflict with Hezbollah and Hamas could escalate to a wider regional conflict. As of this week, the UN Security Council will hold an emergency assembly to discuss solutions for a ceasefire.
President Joe Biden is preparing to pass legislation to reduce gun violence following the recent school shootings plaguing the states. As it has been a year since the Office of Gun Violence Prevention had been formed, Vice President Kamala Harris leads this bill, significant in Biden's presidency and Harris's campaign for office. What we know now is that OGVP has worked to implement the Safer Communities Act, the first gun control law passed in 3 decades, allowing for tighter background checks and funding to help those victims of these massacres. The Vice President has been working closely with parents who have lost children, understanding their demands to aid the creation of these policies that will protect the country from this epidemic. Gun violence has been an ongoing priority within the Biden administration, and new executive actions will be announced in the coming weeks. Over the past weeks, many Arizona schools have been receiving false threats, and the culprits will shock you. More with this story, reporter Brandon Muth. Brandon?
Thank you, Andy. Students and their families are raising concerns throughout Arizona over a rise in threats made against multiple Valley schools within the past week. Schools in Phoenix, Tucson, Buckeye, Mesa, and Prescott Valley have been targeted by a series of falsified school threats. At this time, 14 kids aged 11 to 17 have been arrested or are currently facing felony charges by police departments across the state. The most recent of these arrests was made by the Phoenix Police Department, arresting a teenage boy on September 19th following his alleged involvement with a social media threat that impacted a dozen schools in the Phoenix area. According to the department, the days following the threat caused about 6,000 students to be absent as a result of the post. Phoenix Police Sergeant Rob Scheer stated in response to the arrest, quote, "We understand teenagers are going to make mistakes at times, and we get that, but this is not a mistake you want to approach. This is not a line you want to cross," end quote. Over in the South, Tucson police arrested 3 juveniles after more than 100 911 calls were made concerning social media threats targeting schools. Another incident in the West Valley saw Buckeye police arrest 3 teens as concerned citizens in Buckeye filed over 300 reports about threats of school shootings last week. Since the deadly shooting that took place at a school in Georgia earlier this month, multiple Arizona law enforcement agencies have reported investigating possible school threats. However, these threats have mostly taken up valuable time and resources from the schools and law enforcement. With some Arizonans viewing these false threats as disruptions to school learning, law enforcement continues to urge students and parents to report a threat instead of reposting it. For The Cut Network, I'm Brandon Muth.
Thank you, Brandon. While social media is fun, remember to always report posts that can potentially harm others.
This past weekend, a gunman shot and killed 4 people at a nightclub located near the University of Alabama campus within Birmingham. The suspect is still at large. Of the victims, 2 men and 1 woman were found dead at the scene, while a man was taken to the hospital and died shortly after. At least 17 were also wounded, including 4 who suffered life-threatening injuries. According to the police, the shooting is believed to have been a targeted attack on one of the deceased victims, while others were, quote, caught in the crossfire, according to Birmingham police spokesperson Thomas Fitzgerald. Of the 4 dead, 3 have been identified as 21-year-old Anitra Holloman of Bessemer, Alabama, and Birmingham natives Taj Booker and Carlos McCain, both 27 years old. Birmingham Mayor Randall Woodfin attributed the past weekend's rise in gun violence as the consequences of the, quote, epidemic of gun violence in the United States. As of late, the search for the suspected gunman is ongoing. Shocking news from the Arizona State University's West Campus regarding a stabbing involving 2 students. More from this story is reporter Kate Nakamura. Kate?
Thank you, Tyler. A stabbing has occurred on Arizona State University's West Campus, leaving 1 student hospitalized and another in police custody. Last Thursday, 19-year-old Casey Sloan allegedly stabbed fellow student Mara Daffrin in the Sands classroom building. According to documents, Sloan arrived to class with the intent to hurt someone. Sloan initially was planning on hurting 2 people, but documents show she decided to attack Daffrin as she, quote, believed the victim was an easier target, end quote. Witnesses say Sloan was sitting at her desk and stabbed Daffrin as she entered classroom 101. Court documents said that Sloan did so, quote, without provocation or any words spoken, end quote. 2 witnesses restrained and disarmed Sloan while others attended to Daffrin. Daffrin sustained injuries to her left side that were non-life-threatening. She was taken to Banner Thunderbird Hospital and underwent surgery on her punctured spleen. Prior to the stabbing, Sloan and Daffrin only shared 1 class prior to the one they were in. Police even said that Daffrin did not know of Sloan before the incident happened. Casey Sloan is facing charges of first-degree attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, interfering with an educational institution, and disorderly conduct. Her cash bail has been set at $250,000. This is an evolving story as the investigation into this incident continues. Stay tuned for more updates. For the Cut Network, I'm Kate Nakamura.
Thank you, Kate. Scary news to hear, but glad to know that everyone is recovering.
Cast your votes and keep your wallets close as Election Day comes closer. Scammers get crafty in finding new ways to take advantage of potential voters. They have become more aggressive in stealing personal information through emails, texts, phone calls, and even fake links to trick people into paying for voter registration. These methods instill concern as scammers contact people to alert them that their paperwork is outdated, saying they are no longer registered to vote or their donations have not gone through. Many ways Americans can protect themselves this coming election season is being alert for potential scams and surveys, using credit cards, and knowing there is no charge for the right to vote. Coming up, almost 100,000 voters are at risk for not being able to vote because of a coding error. Cut reporter Ian Rigney tells us more. Ian?
It's election season here in Arizona, with campaign signs dotting every street. But when many thought there were no twists left for this election season, another one came right out of left field. Over the past week, Arizonans faced a potential disqualification of almost 100,000 voters. This situation began to unfold as the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, who plays a key role in election management, noticed a glitch in their system. Asking for a better explanation of the glitch, J.P. Martin, the Arizona Secretary of State's Deputy Communications Director, provided a pretty simple explanation.
There are ways that data was being encoded at MVD that didn't meet requirements, right, for people to be on voting rolls. And so they never provided that additional proof of citizenship. And that was the problem that needed to be fixed. And so now when we have folks who have not moved, but they had an ID from before 1996, our system will now flag that they need to provide that documentary proof of citizenship if they do want to change their voter registration.
This glitch happens to trace back pretty far into the systems for the election officials. As for how long, J.P. Martin explained his office's timeline of events.
I would say around the first week of September, it was Maricopa County that brought this to our attention. And this coding oversight problem, though, goes back many, many years, almost 30 years.
With only 2 months left to Election Day and not enough time to verify every single voter, the state needed some help from the highest court in the land. Needing the Arizona Supreme Court to rule in, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office sued the Secretary of State's office, asking the court to allow these voters to continue voting as if everything was normal. The court responded quickly. ruling that all these 97,000 voters can continue to vote in this year's federal and state elections. Even with the 97,000 voters being cleared for this election, the journey to solve this issue is not over, with the Secretary of State's office saying they'll be reaching out to these voters after the election to help re-verify them.
Please know that if anyone affected is part of this list, either the county recorder, an election official, or our office will be there to let them know that they have been affected and will provide regular updates on the emerging situation.
This has already been an election season of many twists and turns, and Arizona just dodged yet another one, thanks to the hard-working election officials of this state. Reporting for the Cut Network, this has been Ian Rigney.
Thank you, Ian. Now let's take a look at sports around the world. Cut sports anchor Courtney Smith is here to tell us more. Courtney?
Welcome back to Sports on the Cut Network. I'm Courtney Ayanna Smith, coming to you straight from the Walter Cronkite School here at Arizona State University. This weekend, we've had some very interesting matchups in college football, as well as some disappointing news when it comes to the China Open, and a well-known NFL quarterback was benched. Let's get straight into the sports. It was a disappointing weekend for the Arizona State Sun Devils after a great start to the season with wins over teams like Texas State and a notable upset against Mississippi State. The Sun Devils walked into their matchup in Lubbock, Texas with a 3-0 record. This was an offensively well-matched game. Throughout the game, the Sun Devils dominated more through the air, while the Texas Tech team dominated through the rushing game. Texas Tech was running back. T. Brooks led all rushers with 117 yards and 27 carries. And he led all rushers on the ground, outrunning the entire Arizona State team in total. For the Sun Devils, Cam Scadaboo led skilled players in all-purpose yards. This was a dynamic night for the senior. He's usually ASU's leading rusher, and he led ASU in receiving this game with 117 yards, leading all players on both teams in receiving yards. For the Sun Devils, Texas Tech was the first team to hold them to under 100 rushing yards, which is their more consistent form of offense, ultimately leaving ASU with a 3-1 record, with the final score being 30-22. It was an upsetting day for tennis fans worldwide as Emma Raducanu pulled out of the China Open. This 21-year-old former U.S. Open winner had to retire due to an injury she acquired this past Saturday in the quarterfinal of the Korean Open. Raducanu went to X, formerly known as Twitter, to inform fans, quote, "I sprained some ligaments in my foot, which unfortunately needs some more time to heal," end quote. Raducanu unfortunately has had other injuries this season, but is scheduled to play next in Wuhan, China on October 7th. We wish her a safe and fast recovery. The 2023 #1 draft pick has been benched. Bryce Young has been benched after just 18 career starts. Andy Dalton started for the Panthers this Sunday, and they played the Raiders. Coach Dave Canales explained the decision to reporters as, quote, "Our chance to take a step forward in our play style and to be able to compete this week against a really good Raiders team," end quote. The Panthers organization has made it abundantly clear they have no intention of permanently benching Young, but they're looking out for the best interests of the team. That's it for Sports on the Cut. I'm Courtney Smith, and I'll see you right here next week.
Thank you, Courtney.
Baby pygmy hippo Moo Dang is taking the internet world by storm all the way from Thailand. If you haven't heard of her before, you will now. Whether you have seen her on TikTok or scrolled through Instagram Reels, you may have seen this baby pygmy hippo making playful gestures to her keepers or making tiny splashes within her enclosure, within the Khao Khao Open Zoo in Bangkok. Moo Dang, which is Thai for bouncy pork, was born this past July to her mother June, and in just a month, she was making splashes on Facebook as the bouncy and playful baby hippo. Her zookeeper, Athapan Nandi, had always posted pictures of the animal's cute moments, but never anticipated the popularity that Moo Dang would bring. One of her fans, Aria Serpiana, said, "She's such a little lump, I want to ball her up and swallow her whole." Before the Moo Dang effect, the zoo averaged around 800 visitors and is now receiving up to 4,000 visitors during the weekday and 10,000 on the weekend in just a few months. And there are now plans to trademark Moo Dang's name and eventually sell Moo Dang t-shirts and other merchandise. However, for those of us who cannot afford the trip, the zoo is planning on setting up a 24-hour live stream that everyone can enjoy. So Andy, what do you think of the live stream? You planning on watching it?
I'm more of a fan of Pesto the Penguin.
Really? Well, in my humble opinion, pound for pound, I'm taking Moo Dang over Pesto every time.
Well, I beg to differ. Thank you for watching the Cut Network.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at @thecut_network and on X at @thecut ASU.
Have a good night.